Welcome back to State and Local. I'm so glad you're with us. And of course, you're watching Norfolk Public Access. I'm Anne Marie Battistone. And my guest, my frequent guest, I'm so glad to have him again because he's fresh off of, well, not fresh off of, but just come off of town meeting. And so my guest is Jim Lehan, Selectman. Oh, thank you again. I'm always so glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Now, I'm just interested to know, what can you tell us, this public information about the business with the that animal cruelty situation?
Very unfortunate, number
Terrible.
one.
Terrible, just awful.
There were 3 individuals involved, 2 minors and an adult. They have been charged, formally charged. All 3 have been charged with animal cruelty. And one of the minors has also been charged with intimidation of a witness.
Wow. You know, I have to say, those kids, honest to God, I just admire them so much because it's hard to come forward.
Well, you mean the kids that
reported
it?
Yeah. Oh, yes. You know, the kids. You know, and obviously, you know, then you're saying this intimidation of a witness. This is what these kids are so afraid of.
Yeah. Well, they should be applauded. I mean.
Absolutely.
They immediately turned it into the police, and the police were able to trace it through the IP address back to the location where it came from, and went in with a search warrant and immediately dealt with the issue and took the kids into custody. So they did a great job.
You know, I feel like the kids should be officially recognized in some way.
Well, I leave that to the police, you know, as they choose. But it's just, I salute the kids for doing that because I know peer pressure is hard for kids in high school, almost at any age now, and they should be saluted.
Right. Oh, definitely. And I mean, you know, and the animal cruelty laws, and Richard Ross was involved with this, were strengthened after that poor dog was found in Quincy that they couldn't even save.
Well, they're charged, and we'll let the courts handle the due process.
Yeah. So you think it would be? You don't think they would want to have any kind of like an official recognition or anything like that?
I can't speak to that. I don't even know who the kids were. I mean, that's all you know. That's all part of the police investigation.
Maybe I'll ask Jack Hathaway about it. You know. So that's okay. Now I did have a viewer ask a question, and she wanted to know. Why is the wastewater treatment plant that the town is upgrading?
Well, we actually took it over.
Or took it over.
Yeah.
And why is it separate from the DPW?
Well.
And why was it taken over?
Okay.
And the third thing, excuse me, just get this out. And the third thing was, would they be doing something with River's Edge's water facility?
Well, let me answer the last question first.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. The circumstances around the wastewater treatment plant up on the hill were actually part of a larger picture. Quite honestly, we've had a number of issues with the developer of that area. Both the town as well as the homeowners association have just we've had problems. So we've been trying for some time to work through those issues. The roads aren't completed, a number of things that haven't been done. And this taking over that treatment plant was part of a larger settlement to work out the considerations and concerns that the town has, independent of what the homeowners association has. They have their own issues and are dealing with that independently. So this is part of that larger settlement, if you will. It is being gifted to the town. We're not spending a dime to acquire this.
Oh, that's good.
So there's no expense. We have had it thoroughly tested, investigated. It's been well researched in terms of its number one, is it in good working order?
Right.
Are there any major issues? What are the financials around it? Have all the filings been done, et cetera? So we've investigated all of that.
Now the town have to pay to do that?
We did pay to have that done,
okay,
yes.
Yeah.
Although we had all the
sense.
records from DEP associated with prior filings with the prior owner. But we found it to be in good condition. It's being used at less than 10 to 15% of its capacity, which makes it a little attractive to us because it could reach down into the center of town.
I see.
So we looked at it for several reasons. One, it allowed us to make a settlement with the developer to get some of the things done that need to get done, primarily the roads. It ended, or I should say, probably stopped some lengthy litigation that we would have been involved in that would have done nothing but pay a lot of lawyers to educate their children for a long period of time. So we would try. We did this through a form of not litigation, but we sat down and we tried to work this through, and we negotiated a settlement that is binding. And part of it, as I say, was taking over the wastewater treatment plant. We're comfortable that it is more than comfortable. We're satisfied that it's in good working order. We're very comfortable that we can run it in terms of, remember, it's paid for by its users. So there's no cost to the town.
Is that why it's not part of the DPW?
Well, it is part of the DPW. We're just accounting for it separately under a separate enterprise fund.
Okay.
So the water department, for example, is under a separate enterprise fund.
Yes. Yeah.
In essence, it's self-sustaining.
Right.
The water department pays for itself.
Right.
So the water users actually pay for
Because
all
of
of the
the
operating
bills, yeah,
considerations
that
of the
you pay
water
for water,
department.
yes.
That will be the case here. The users will pay for all of the expenses associated with that wastewater treatment plant. So it was attractive to us for two reasons. One, it allowed us to come to a settlement to work out the significant issues we had, significant issues with the developer. And secondly, we think that longer term, it has some opportunity for us to expand it into the center of town. Give you an example. If a restaurant, there was a proposed restaurant up on Boardman Street, as you remember, well, 7, 8 years ago, that has not materialized.
At the corner of Boardman.
Correct,
Boardman,
that
yeah.
hasn't materialized. Because of the need for septic, which most of the town is on, if not all of the town for all intents and purposes, that restaurant would have been limited to 48 seats. And again, it's driven by septic. Well, other considerations too, but septic is one of the main ones. If you had a treatment center capability where you didn't need a separate septic system, you could build a much larger restaurant. So we have a gentleman that has bought the land in front of Walgreens. That has been purchased by some time ago, about 8 to 10 months ago.
Oh.
Yeah, that land has been sold. It's no longer owned by Stop and Shop. Now, the old area where the supposed Stop and Shop was going to go is still owned by Stop and Shop. But the land, that the Walgreens area, the two little stores next to it, and the area in front are no longer owned by Stop and Shop.
So what is still owned by Stop and Shop? What part of that
Just
is still?
the land over by the parking lot.
Oh, okay.
Is still owned by Stop and Shop.
You know, if I may interrupt you now, I just was curious on the business with the roads not being properly paved. What are those people doing up there in the spring and the winter?
Well, it's private property. Keep this in mind.
Yeah.
You know, they're not town-owned
No, I
roads.
know,
They're
but-
private property.
but-
we had what are known as orders of condition associated with that development.
Yeah.
Goes back probably 10 years. That required certain things to be done that weren't being done.
Right.
Quite honestly, weren't being done.
Right.
And you know, we were at a point where either we had to find a solution that all parties could agree to get this done, or we were going to be in court.
But what do those people do up there with unpaved roads?
Well, they're paved, but they're in terrible condition. It's only the initial coat that's on the road. They haven't been finished.
Okay. So they're not actually on
They're not
rubble
on dirt. No, they're not on dirt. But there are substantial problems with what is up there, and it needs to be repaired.
Now, will all taxpayers be paying into the water that's used in that facility up there?
No. The only people that will be involved in the operational costs of that facility are the people that are using it.
Okay.
So it's user funded.
Okay.
Which right now is Walgreens. And the condo association.
And then the little store that's going in there, the little cafe.
And the little store, yeah. So they are the only ones subsidizing the operation, or paying for, I should say, the operation of that wastewater treatment plant.
For everybody else in town, if somebody's has a swimming pool and whatnot, then that impacts everybody else overall in town, does it not?
Well, that's the water department. I mean.
Okay.
Okay. The reason we set this up as a separate enterprise fund is so that we can manage it separately from the other components of the town government, if you will. We can account for it differently. We can manage it more effectively in terms of both revenue and expense. So.
Okay. So I think I'm sorry to interrupt you. So did we cover that then? Is that?
Yeah.
Is there
I mean,
it's.
I understand why people would wonder why. I mean, we're not incapable of managing this, but we're not really in that business of managing wastewater treatment plants. But I think what's important for hopefully folks to understand is part of a larger picture that would have fallen on the back of the taxpayers, by the way. You know, if we had to take action, legal action, we have to pay for that. And so we were really trying to, in some degree, avoid that and not get into a situation where we were getting into some significant litigation fees.
So maybe I don't understand. So wastewater treatment plants pertain to businesses?
Well, it's a sewage treatment plant. Is
Okay.
What it is. It's an alternative to a septic system.
Okay.
And we
That
have one
each
at River.
house- that each
we have
house
several
has.
in town. We have several in town. River's Edge has one, as you know.
Okay.
You mentioned that.
Right.
There's one down at the prison.
Okay.
They're not. They're common, if
Right.
you will. I might add, by the way, that the DEP and other organizations that monitor and permit these areas were thrilled to have us take it over. They were in favor of this.
Good.
They like to see towns get involved in managing these because, quite honestly, they feel we can do it more effectively than private enterprise.
Now, I'm dying to know, who bought the property across from Walgreens, and what's going to happen there?
Well, we don't know. It's a developer.
It can't be
we
houses,
don't know.
obviously. It's got to be retail,
Well,
right?
it can be mixed use. All of our downtown is zoned for mixed use, so you could put in small retail
that's
shops.
what the EDC was talking about.
Yeah,
You'd have
I mean,
the
that's
short
ideal.
sto-
I mean,
the
we-
stores on the bottom and then a condo
on the top. Yep, it's zoned to do that, and we'd love to see that happen in the center of our town.
Now, what if the developer wanted it to be rental, or do they usually not get
That's
into
their
that?
business. That's up to them.
Okay.
We don't oversee how people run their business. Our role is just the permitting process.
I would assume the town really wouldn't want apartments. They would prefer the stability of condos, right? If you're talking about...
I think you're going to find a lot of people have different opinions on that, but it's not us to decide. I mean, if the permitting process tells you what you can build, it doesn't tell you what you do with it.
But
So
typically, I would imagine they'd want to just be free of it and not have to be bothering with
that's
a manager and all that
that's
stuff.
That's a business owner's decision. That's
Yeah.
not a town decision.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did you find out for me what's going on the bottom of at the bottom of 115 across from the?
I apologize, I did not. So I don't know. I'm not on the planning board.
Right.
We're not a permitting board. I honestly don't know. And I know you asked me to do that, and I forgot. So guilty as charged.
Because I noticed it says drive-through.
Drive-through approved. Yeah.
Approved.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's also a leasing sign in front too. So I'm not sure. I mean, on 1A we have a Dunkin' Donuts going in up on the right.
Yes, and the subway.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe. And a gas station.
And a gas station. Yep.
Well, strictly my opinion, not the opinion of this TV. I mean, I would be very happy if there was some competition in the gas rates, gasoline prices in this town.
Well, they're opposite ends of town, and that's a good thing. 1A is
Right.
one end of, in the center of town's another.
Well, not
but
too far away, but yeah.
Well,
Because
competition is never a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, I find dailies to be very high. I mean, sometimes it's like 20 cents per gallon more than other places you can go right nearby. So I always fill up and get the. Well, that's just me. I fill up as much as I need. And I go off.
Okay.
That's what I do. Now, what about town meeting? You were going to talk.
Well, town meeting wasn't. I mean, this fall town meeting is never a big event. We don't have a lot to do, but we did initiate a process that is important. We have a town planner, Ray Goff, who's doing a fabulous job. And he's helping us sort of rethink how we do things. Because a lot of times things just evolve as opposed to really kind of be planned out. And Ray brings a different perspective to it. So he's really helping us make some changes that will streamline the process, become more efficient. And in addition to that, he's reviewing all of our bylaws. And so we had a number of changes to our bylaws that were, in some cases, house cleaning, and in some cases, just general fixes, if you will.
Can you give any examples of that come to mind?
A couple of the changes that we made, for example, we have a bylaw that allows people to put solar by right. So if you want to put solar on your property, you have a right to do that. We didn't want to change
like on
that.
the roof or on the ground?
On the roof or the ground,
yeah.
right. And we didn't want to change people's rights, but there was an issue where someone had put a solar array on the ground because of the way their house was configured, and they put it right next to someone else's property. And it created somewhat of an issue.
Yeah.
And there was nothing in our bylaw to require that individual to do anything about that, to put a fence up or anything of that nature, because it was by right. So we made a change to the bylaw that said that if you're doing a ground-mounted solar system, that you need a special permit. And all that special permit does is bring into consideration the neighbor. It doesn't prevent you from doing it. It just means that you have to be sensitive to the consideration of the neighbor. So whether it's to put a fence up to shield it from the neighbor's backyard or things of that nature. Pardon?
Was it considered an eyesore?
That's one issue, sure. I mean, if someone puts it right next to your backyard, literally on the property line or something of that nature, and it has an impact on your home. And so it allows the planning board to hear that concern and provide some form of mitigation, if you will, to protect the interest of the neighbor. It doesn't prevent you from doing it.
Right.
So that's
it
one
couldn't,
change.
right? I mean, you
can
couldn't
still do it.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of providing some protection. So we did have a specific incident of that nature that kind of brought it to focus for us. We made some changes to, I think one of the great debates we had was on kennels.
Yes, what was that all about?
Oh, basically we were just updating our bylaw to conform with the state law. And
the number of dogs that you can keep? Or what,
yeah.
Did it have something to do with a dog play date place or
that's just
an event or something?
What's considered a business and not a business kind of discussion is really what that was about. Because there are definitions within the bylaw, and there was kind of a fun debate as to whether doggy daycare was, the same thing as a doggy play date.
Right.
And I'm not going to get into that, but it's not a big deal.
Well, the daycare would be for longer time than.
Well, that's not what the law says, but anyway, it was a house cleaning issue. It probably had more debate by the committee as well as the town than any other bylaw.
That's what somebody said.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. I mean, I have 2 dogs. Everybody
right.
is interested in dogs, but it's not a big deal. It just basically provides updates us to the state regulations and makes things a little easier for people to understand.
So what is the nature of her business now, or it was?
According to her, she does basically sort of doggy play dates. I mean, I don't know what else to call it.
And the dogs come.
I imagine
and
the dogs come
yard
and visit for a period of time and then go
with
home.
each other and.
Yeah.
Okay, so she wasn't okay.
Kind of like babysitting.
But they were calling that a kennel.
Well, a kennel defines the number of dogs that you have on premise. I mean,
at a time.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that would come to play with.
Well, it could or could not, depending on how whether they're permanent or not permanent. They stay overnight. They don't stay overnight.
Right.
I mean, there are a lot of issues associated with that, but it wasn't a big deal.
Because I could see where that would be an issue of a neighbor with the barking
Sure.
and all of that
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah, I could too. So anyway, but again, it's not a huge deal, but it did spark some interesting debate. There really wasn't much else in town meeting. It was not. I don't think we had to.
There weren't many people there. I
wish we got better attendance at town meeting. I mean, it's
even David Rosenberg told me he didn't go. As I asked him, I said, "What happened?
Yeah.
What happened?" I couldn't make it.
A fall town meeting is never as well attended as spring town meeting because it's not a financial meeting.
True.
We in the spring we do all our budgets and that's important because we can't spend a dime until the voters tell us we can. So it's important that we get a good turnout there. But I wish we had a better turnout in the fall meeting too, because zoning is the most boring thing in the world for people to listen to.
Right.
And it's confusing.
Yes.
But it's very important.
Oh,
because
definitely.
it really impacts what your town looks like.
Oh, exactly.
So it's important stuff. And Ray's been terrific. He's going to continue to go through these bylaws. We have bylaws that contradict each other, that aren't clear in their interpretation.
Well, wasn't that how the
so he's
EDC
fixing that.
Oh, I know what I wanted to ask. Now, is the EDC going to disband because he has been hired?
No, I wouldn't say. I mean, no.
They'd still be advisory because I think there's only 2 of us left, and I
it's
I
more that
contacted the chair
Ray,
and he.
It's more that Ray can bring more focus to it. I mean, volunteer committees are tough. I mean, you're on them, you serve on them, and it's whatever time you can commit, and it's hard for people to really spend the volume of time they need to spend to get things done. And so you reach a point in your growth where you need professional help. And we had reached a point where we needed professional help.
Oh no, I don't. Yeah, I don't. I wasn't. I just
so
wondered.
Ray's been great. He's gotten a tremendous amount done. He works very closely with the planning board. We're doing some things on the planning board that we've never done before in terms of how we handled the business before us, and he's cleaning it up. I won't say cleaning it up. He's streamlining it.
Because when I moved, I've been here 19 years, and I guess about the year after I came, I think it was when they started the EDC, and the issue was that it was so hard for people to open businesses because of do this, do that, and do this the same thing.
Yeah.
And so the purpose of it originally was to make like a map, a map to get through it, to have everything laid out.
And we have that. We have that.
And so there's still issues with needing to be
yes,
improved.
I mean, I won't say issues may be the right word. We can do better, maybe is the right way to say it. We've done a lot. The boards have worked very hard to become more user-friendly to the town, and to people that want to work within the town. We've become better at it, but it's a work in progress, and we can always do better. All of us can do better. So Ray is helping us do that. He brings an outside perspective to things. He's worked in a number of other communities that he can share, he can look at things differently. You know, we're creatures of our own habit.
Right.
You know, and we've kind of evolved into our systems.
Right.
He can look at that and say, you know, there's a better way. There's an not necessarily better, but there's a different way to take a look at this. And he's really been very active in doing that.
Where else has he worked prior to coming here?
He worked
Do you
in
know?
Rhode Island.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. For a town very similar to
So I
Norfolk.
was just going to say a similar sized town.
For a number of years. And so we're not as far along as the town was in Rhode Island. So we're kind of an interesting challenge for him. And he's really been great.
Because I remember people used to come and speak to the EDC, and they would just have these ridiculous
One of the things that we're hoping
tales they were telling
we don't
about.
we don't have what I would call a business development unit in town. EDC in theory was supposed to do that, but again, it's volunteers.
Right.
You know, we don't have a brochure that promotes what we offer.
Oh, you do?
We don't.
Oh, you don't? Yeah.
Or who we are. We don't have any of that, and we need to do that. And we are who we are. You know, we can't present ourselves as something that we're not. This is a rural community. We don't have any major thoroughfare through the center
we were
of
just
town.
talking about that.
We have one stoplight, you know, but that there's value to that. We have a great school system. You know, it's a wonderful place to raise kids. It's a nice community to live in. Now, some people want to live in Boston, you know, and they love going down to the local bar every Thursday night. I don't mean that as a criticism. It's a great way of life. Other people want to live in the country and you know, and have different. So if that's what you want, we're a great town to have that, and we don't want to lose that. So we can't pretend to be what we're not. We're never going to be. We don't have a location where we can build a Rentham outlet. Okay, it's not going to happen in Norfolk. So understanding that, we need to promote who we are. And we need to begin to package that and help people understand. And that will attract small businesses and, you know, people that like the little donut place, not donut place, but bagel place that's opening up, and it is moving along. It's
the
fully
cafe there, yes.
Yep, it's fully permitted.
Thank goodness.
So they, you know, as soon as they get their work done, they'll be open, and they're
Have
working
they
on it.
started working
Oh,
inside?
yeah. Yep, they have.
Huh.
Yeah, the plumbers are there now.
Is that right?
So,
Well, I saw somebody outside.
Yeah, they're making progress, but importantly, they're fully permitted.
Now, it's just half of that building.
Yes, just half. Yeah.
Because before she was going to be in the old floral place, plus
Right, but
what was used to be next door there?
Well, you're talking over by Dailies.
Yeah. What was it? What was the
There
other?
was a pharmacy there. Used to be a pharmacy.
So she would have had a much bigger
and
space.
there was a pharmacy on the left and a florist on the right.
Right. So she would have had two spaces
that
there.
pharmacy's been gone for 20 years.
Oh, I know that, but I mean, she would have had a much bigger place over there.
Yeah, but this has got more parking. It's in a better location.
Oh, it's a new building.
Yeah, it's a new building. She can build it her way.
Right.
You know, so there's something good about that, I think,
Right.
and I think she's happy with that.
Have you seen any of the plans for that are going to go? How it might look inside?
I have not. No.
That hasn't
no.
been. Well, but eventually she'll go
Planning board
show
has.
that to the plan. Who has?
Planning board has. I haven't. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
By the way, is Jeff Palumbo still? Is he still serving on the planning board?
He is.
Is he coming up to the end of his term?
You know, I don't know when his term is up on planning board, to be honest with you.
But when it does, do you think he'll stay on and do?
You'll have to ask him
Yeah,
that
you don't
question.
know. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
So now, what else is there? Now about that area down there where the subway is going to be. Have you seen that plot? How that's going to configure? Because there's a brick building down there. Is it going in there? There's a brick building. It sort of looks like a house.
Well, the
What
old
is
house
that?
the old house came down, and there was a building there before.
Right.
That's gone, and it's going to be. I mean, I don't know how else to
But
describe
there's
it.
a brick building down there that has like a little cement sort of porch on the front.
I'm not sure where you're talking about.
It's west of the saloon.
I mean, all I can tell you is it's a Dunkin' Donuts gas station and a Subway.
But they're building their own buildings.
They're building their own
Oh,
buildings.
they are.
Yeah.
So this other one I'm talking about, it looks like retail. I mean, it's.
Well, there are a couple of things that I think would be interesting for folks at home. One, we have secured the location for the new police opportunity.
Oh, that's right.
We
Where's
got
that
permission
going?
from town meeting in May. I know I've talked about it before, but we have been working for years to regionalize different departments with some of our neighboring towns, and it's been frustrating.
Oh, yes.
We haven't made a lot of progress,
Right.
and now we have.
Oh, uh-huh.
We are regionalizing police and fire dispatch. Franklin, Rentham, Plainville, and Norfolk are all coming together.
And where's that going to be?
It's going to be in the new building we just secured right off of 1A. You know where the Dunkin' Donuts is going in?
Yeah.
Right behind that, up in Shire Park. There
road up in the back.
Yeah, there was a vacant building there that fit perfectly for what we wanted.
I've never been over there. I've never been up there.
So we have purchased that building.
Oh.
And we are now we've gone out to bid for architectural design. We have the funding from the state.
Now, what was in the building before?
It was vacant. It's been vacant for
what
6
was
years.
it originally
Never been
built?
used. It wasn't ever. It
Like
wasn't
a
even,
warehouse?
Wasn't
or
even permitted for occupancy.
was it like a big empty
Big
warehouse?
empty
or-
warehouse. Yeah.
So that you'll be putting in the walls and.
Oh yeah, yeah. But the basic structure is there. But just about a quarter of that, or a little bit more, will be used for the regional dispatch, fully funded by state money. We will receive rent because we own the building.
Even the improvements are funded by
All
the
of the
state?
work that's going to be done on the regional dispatch will be funded by state money.
Oh, that's a relief.
Yeah, so it won't. It's not costing our taxpayers anything.
Because, speaking of, because we've just got a few minutes, maybe you can come back. I know you're always willing to come back. But we were talking about the tax rate went up. Did it go from what to what?
Unfortunately, it did. I was one of the optimists that thought it might go down. People don't fully understand the tax rate. I mean, we don't have what's known as a split rate. You either have a single rate or split rate. Split rate means where you charge commercial more than you charge residential.
Right.
Rentham has a split rate.
Right.
I believe Walpole has a split rate.
Medfield does not.
Medfield does not. Right. But towns that are like us, like Holliston, Hopkinton, towns that are Sherburne, towns that are similar that don't have a lot, we're 93% residential tax base, 7% commercial and industrial tax base. So we're heavy on the homeowner, as is Sherburne, as is Holliston, as is Hopkinton. So with that in mind, the tax rate works by the assessed value versus your operational budget. And we have not had an override in this town since 2005. So we haven't asked for a dime more in almost 10 years. So we're operating within our budget. That's not the issue. But that budget goes up 2.5% every year, which is what the state tells you can do. The 2.5% levy. When evaluations go down, when property values go down, the tax rate goes up to offset it because
Right.
I'm oversimplifying, but it
No, I
really is
understand.
almost that simple. It's the amount of your budget divided by the total amount of your
Almost
value.
like with bonds in a way, the way bonds work.
To a
and
certain
price-
degree, but you take the total value of all the property and you divide it by your operating budget,
Right.
and you come up with a number.
So what did it, we just have a few minutes, what did it go from?
Went up about
What-
22 cents.
From what
it was
to-
7.43, 42, somewhere in that range.
17.
Well, no, 17, excuse me. 17.4, I wish. 17.42 or 3, I believe, and it's now up to 17.66. It went up about 22 cents
Per thousand.
per thousand, yeah. And the reason being is that the valuations only went up 2.5% this year. I thought they would be higher.
Oh, okay.
I thought they would go up 3 or 4%. They didn't. They only went up 2%. But next year, well, I can't speak to next year. We'll see. where it
We've
goes.
got to stop now because we run out of time.
Yeah.
But maybe you can come back another time and talk about
Sure.
how that works because I think it does something behoove people to.
Well, I know it
to
always
understand
upsets
that.
people, but I would just, if I may, just a couple of minutes, if we can go. If you look at towns that are similar to us, and I use Hopkinton and Holliston as a good example, both their tax rates are much higher than ours. One of them, I think, is around $20. Medway is about $20.
More?
Sherburne is
Medway?
yeah, Medway.
I know they must have two rates.
Yeah, Medway doesn't. Medway is a single rate.
Wow.
Sherburne, I know the property values are higher in
Oh, yeah.
Sherburne, but even with the higher property values, Sherburne is, I think, around $20.
Get out.
And so when, but that's because there's no commercial base. There's nothing to offset
Medway
that.
has, and Medway's houses are not, I would say they're not more expensive than Norfolk's, and Medway doesn't have.
Actually, I think their total assessed value and proportionately per average price of home is lower.
Lower in Medway.
Right.
And they don't
So
have a huge amount
but
of.
if it's lower, you have to raise the tax rate
Okay.
to offset the difference. The lower, when values go down, the tax rate goes up. When the values go up, the tax rate comes down.
Huh.
Much like
Gee,
bonds.
I wouldn't have.
And I know that's an oversimplification, but again, I hope we're not boring people, but one thing that I just want to quickly talk about, we do have a major issue with water in town. And we've been dealing with it for about 10 years, and we've done a number of things to prepare for that issue, or not prepare
Going
for
back
it,
to our first topic.
but to deal with it. We've built some auxiliary wells for backups, and we have entered into agreements with other towns so that if we have an issue, we're hooked up with Rentham, for example, we're hooked up with Franklin so they can turn the spigot on to give us water if we had an issue, and vice versa. We could do the same for them. But with the building potential opportunities that seem to be out there for new developments, we have a major issue. So we are moving from we got to work on it list to the top of the list to really find an alternative site. We've got a couple that we're looking at that have some potential, but that is a real priority for us.
couple of what?
New wells. We need a new
Oh,
well.
oh.
We need a new well. And
Does it have to be within the town of Norfolk?
yes, yeah, yeah. If you
And that means drilling and...
The bad news is that when you use someone else's opportunity, they got you.
Oh, definitely.
And so while we have connectivity with towns, they charge us. We had to do it on a couple of occasions. The expense of that is just too much.
So you have
Not a good
somebody come in and do they have one of those sticks, so they
yeah,
go around to find...
Well, I don't think it's quite that bad, no. But we do have a system that tells us where the water sources are. We know where the aquifers are. We know where we can look and not look.
Do you go to the state to get that information?
A lot of it is from state data, yeah. A lot of it is. And we know the areas that have potential. Then we look at the property, because it takes about, to put a wellhead in, you need about 16 acres of land, because you have to have an 800-foot radius
Right.
around the well. So it takes, there are only certain places we can put it.
Do you know where some of those places
We
might
do.
be?
We have areas, especially on town-owned land. We also know that there might be some situations like up at the Rentham School. They have a well at the Rentham School, which is actually in the town of Norfolk.
Right.
So, an ideal situation
right.
would be to work out something with them.
Is all of that in Norfolk? Excuse me. Is all of that in Norfolk?
Well, the school's in Rentham, but the well is in Norfolk.
Oh, I mean, okay.
Yeah. But we're going to explore that. And there are other situations where we're looking. There's a well that is a little difficult with Franklin because of, we have some issues around the current Franklin well. But there are opportunities that we're moving to the higher priority list that we need to solve, because this has to be solved. We need to find a solution to this quickly.
What does it cost to produce one of those? Do you know?
A well is anywhere from $1.5 million, somewhere in that range.
So would you have to float some sort of a bond?
Well, we have a little over $600,000 right now in what we call the capital account in the enterprise fund for the water department. We'd have to go, if we had to drill from scratch and do everything from scratch, we'd have to borrow to do that. But again, it's all within the water department. It doesn't fall on anybody other than the water users, unfortunately.
Would that be part of a municipal bond that
Well,
people could buy for their funds, for their to be a part of a
yeah.
bond
all
fund
of our,
like with
all
Fidelity?
of our all of our debt is through bonds that the public can buy.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they don't buy those individually. They might be part
No,
of
they'd be part of a
bond
package.
fund that Fidelity
Correct.
might have, or Vanguard, or one of those.
Exactly right.
Wow.
Yeah. And our bond rating has gone up twice in the last.
What is it now? Do you know?
AA+.
Really?
Yeah.
And the maximum is what? AAA plus?
AAA.
Oh, that's good.
For a town our size, it's outstanding.
Oh.
Yeah. We put a smile on our, because that makes it much easier to borrow money.
And we
get
thank
it at low.
we thank the selectmen for that.
No, you can thank the finance department for that.
Just teasing.
You can thank them. They do all the hard work.
See, I always like to tease him about what he does in town and so forth, and he's always,
Well,
deflects.
it's the finance department. I mean, they're hawks on our budget, and they keep us in the straight and narrow. They do a great job. They really do a great job. I'm not being
That's a reassurance.
not being gratuitous about this. I mean, they really manage. Our budgets are tight. They're managed well. I mean, I can't tell you how many times they knock on our door and say, so they do a great job, and they're the ones that get the credit, because they're the ones that deserve it.
I like to have you on because I feel personally I can trust what you say.
Well, thank you.
And I mean, I don't always say that about, that's just me, but I really feel, I've always felt like I could trust what you say, and that you were
not always
reliable.
right.
No, but to the best of your ability.
To the best of my- well, thank you
And
for
I don't
that.
think that's not everybody that you
But we have so many good people in town that volunteer so much. You're kind enough to have me on, so maybe from some perspective I'm more visible. But there are a lot of people that do.
Oh, I know.
As much, if not more, than I do or other people do. And we run on the backs of volunteers.
I know.
And we've got a town full of them. I mean, look at all the good things that have happened. Look at the recreation department and all the work that we do, what they've done, and that's all. That board's all volunteer.
But years ago when they started that EDC, it seemed to me that there were people on some of those boards that just did not want business, and were just inflexible, and just were anti-business. That was my impression.
Well,
I think that can happen with volunteers because they're not employees, and somebody comes on the board and can set the tone.
We all come to the table with our own views and opinions. Everybody does. But what I have found, and all, both serving on school committee and on these boards, I have found that the overwhelming majority of the people really only want to do what's in the best interest of the town.
Well, that's all a matter of
that's
philosophy, though, isn't that?
That's supposed to be why you're there.
Right.
And we sometimes look at a little deviation to that. We make that the norm, and it's not the norm. The norm is people are trying to do the right thing. and
Because that just depends on whether they feel like they don't want business in the town or they do. You know, I mean, there's advantages, I suppose, to both scenarios.
That's what makes democracy. You know, I mean,
Thank God we still have
diversification, differences of opinions, and you know that's what makes it work.
But you understand what I'm saying?
I understand
you know,
what you're
I mean,
saying.
it's.
Yeah. But we're better at that now than we were.
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, I do. I absolutely.
We're
think
friendlier than
yeah,
we were.
I think so.
Yeah. We need the revenue. I mean, new
Well,
growth. New growth
and
this
the
year is around.
convenience.
New growth represents about $600,000 of revenue to the town. It's an all-time high for us. We've never had this much.
You're talking about from businesses.
I'm talking about growth, whether it's people adding on to their homes or buying or purchasing new homes or building new homes. The medical building down on that's gone. That is a huge revenue item to us. That's going to bring in a good chunk of tax revenue.
Do you know anything about which doctors are going in there?
No idea. No clue. But
is it owned by a group of doctors?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I know one of them is from Norwood Hospital.
It could be. I don't know.
I mean, it's my husband's doctor.
My doctor's not there, so I don't know. But that's an enormous amount. That's a big moneymaker for us.
But isn't $600,000 not that much to come in every
$600,000
year?
of new growth. I'm not talking about tax revenue. That's just new growth. That's new stuff on the books that wasn't there the year before.
And the valuation of it as new stuff.
Yes, and the valuation of it. But every time a new home goes up that wasn't there the year before, that's considered new growth. And initially it's tacked at its sort of raw value,
but it
land
can also
value.
create a drain.
Well, if it's not
In terms of using the services
it can,
in the schools.
if it's allowed to get out of control, sure. I mean, you have to be conscious of what your capacities are in your schools, and we are.
Water.
We're very
back to
conscious
that.
of water. That's why it's on our priority list. We're very conscious of that. You know, you can't have out of control growth. I mean, you can, but it's going to ruin your town, and no one's allowing that to happen.
I do have one other question before we go. On the other side, heading south on 115 before you get to 1A, there's the place on the left that we don't know about. And on the right, near the radio station, isn't there something back in there and it says build to suit? And I think they've built another little exit further up.
They did, and it
115 like as an exit from parking.
Yeah.
Do you know what that is?
I don't. You know, that area has been we're getting more growth in that area than any other part of town.
Right.
And that's a good place to have it.
Right, yeah.
It's a great place to have it because that is a very, commercial
down
area.
that end, there really
and
aren't any houses.
It's the biggest road we have, 1A. You know, it's a perfect place for it. So this is a good thing for the town. That medical building, I think, is bringing in close to just that building alone, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000-$60,000 of tax revenue. Just that one building.
Tax now. You're talking about.
Tax revenue every year. Every year. I mean, and so that's
we
need
seem to have
that.
done a nice job with the landscaping
Very
and the
nice,
building and all.
and it's an unoffensive business. You know,
Right,
it's
that's true.
It's a very unoffensive
Just a point,
business.
yeah, just right.
So it fits beautifully in the area.
There's no surgery going on. It's just
I don't know.
offices.
I think
oh,
it's
you
just
don't know.
offices, but I don't think it's surgical. No, but that's what we need. We need to find more of those opportunities, and we got to be friendly to have be friendly enough for people to want to come here.
And then of course people go and eat at the Subway, and then they'll go and get coffee at the Dunkin' Donuts that's down there.
Perfect
in the saloon.
Perfect to have it next to the police station.
Right. And then
I kid Chuck about that.
And then the saloon down there, if people want to go
Yeah.
down and eat. I mean, when you think about it, it's just really mushrooms, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it feeds on itself. Yes, it does.
And then people can just scoot right down to 1A.
Yeah.
From there.
So that's been very successful for us, and it's continuing to be that way. So
maybe I'll see if I can lasso Jeff Palumbo and see if he can talk a little bit more in depth about these
Jeff can bring you
things.
in the insight of the planning board's view on these things. He serves on that board, and he would certainly have a lot more knowledge on the specifics of those buildings than I would.
Yeah, and we can put up a map and see where all these things are.
Yeah.
Oh, so thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I appreciate it so much. Thank you for watching State and Local. I'm Anne-Marie Battistone, and you've been watching Norfolk Public Access. My guest was Jim Lehan. I want to thank him again for coming on, and have a very Merry Christmas. By the time this goes on the air, it'll hopefully still be before Christmas, so have a wonderful Christmas. Bye-bye.